Let's talk more about Thabo Bester and the failure to appear today, at least by G4S officials, before the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services. A member of the committee, DA MP Glynnis Breytenbach, joining us tonight. Glynnis, a very good evening to you. Grateful for your time. You are not convinced that this was a simple issue around miscommunication?
No, I'm afraid that I'm not. It's very clear from the correspondence that is in possession of the chairperson that an invitation was extended last week already. It was extended to DCS and by implication also to G4S. It was very clear that DCS was, the intention was that they should bring G4S with them, and for G4S to say they were not invited, to put in the media that they would love to be invited, well, that in my view is disingenuous. They were invited. And now they've written a letter late last night for a sitting today to say they really do want to cooperate, but they want to be summoned because they want the Protection of the Powers and Privileges Act. Well, it's a flimsy protection that they're hoping to achieve. But my question is this, why do they feel they need it?
Mm-hmm. And what would that protection allow for G4, as far as G4S participation in a meeting with the committee? What protection would they get, so to speak?
Well, it simply means this, as I understand it, that similar to a commission of inquiry, where you give evidence about a certain matter that's in the public domain, this matter, something perhaps like the Zondo Commission, the evidence that you give cannot then be packaged and used against you. That information can be sought, achieved, and used via a different route, through a different investigation, but you can't use the information given in the inquiry or in this interaction with the Portfolio Committee, for instance. Can't be packaged and used against you in any other actions or criminal inquiries or anything else. And
is that why you said this in one of the quotes I've read from your participation in today's hearing, where you said that the absolute contempt with which they've operated leaves me so outraged that I have a lot of trouble containing it?
Absolutely. I really find it difficult to explain my outrage. Here we have a dangerous criminal, a dangerous convicted criminal who has had multiple convictions for rape and murder. And there are victims of this man who are out there trying to scrape together their lives and get their lives back together after a seriously traumatic experience. And in a rape, believe me, the rape is traumatic. There's no question about it. Coming to give evidence about it is another trauma altogether. They've gone through that. They've suffered it. They've put themselves out there. They've dragged themselves through these harrowing experiences. And they didn't even know that he was out. Nobody let them know. They've not been protected. They could quite conceivably go to a shopping center to buy their groceries and bump into the very fellow that raped them while they are under the impression that he's in prison. I mean, the horror of that leaves me totally outraged.
Mm. And it's with that in mind that I want to ask you this next question. Thabo Bester basically escaped out of prison almost a year ago, faked his death, as we're now learning. A body was placed in his cell, and then we're told there was a vehicle, as per an internal investigation by the Correctional Services Department, that found that there was the irregular movement of a car in and out of the facility on the night in question. But all of this comes 10 months since the escape, and I have to wonder if there's anything that G4S or the Correctional Services Department can say to explain this that would make any sense, that would make it any more acceptable.
Well, this is the stuff of a Hollywood movie. You can't make this kind of stuff up. And yet here we have it happening in our country, where a maximum security prison is the regulations thereof are flouted in this fashion. And as you say, 10 months later, thanks largely to civil society again and investigative journalism again, this has come to the attention in the public domain. This wasn't brought to the attention of the Portfolio Committee by either GCS or G4S. Never been reported to the Portfolio Committee in these 10 months. It's certainly something that's deep public concern, and it should have been reported immediately. Why has this been kept quiet? And with all due respect to the Minister, I hear him saying there's an investigation on the go and let it play out, and in due course we'll get the results. Well, when?
Let's talk about the Minister for a moment and any investigation that government will do or conduct into the escape of Thabo Bester. From what we've seen so far, even in their statements, it's basically a confirmation, is it not, of what journalists initially from ground up were able to confirm. And it's raised the question of why it is that reporters have been able to get ahead of government on even gathering information in this post-exposure period where finally the department, which initially would not confirm that Bester had escaped, has now done, but is still basically seemingly catching up with information that's coming through the media.
Well, it's very clear that either they don't have the information and they have done a shoddy job of investigating it, which is an indictment on the one hand. The other, of course, conclusion that one could reach is that this information is available to them and they're unwilling to share it with the public because, frankly, it makes them look beyond useless.
And if G4S is summoned before Parliament, what would you want them to, summoned to appear? What would you want them
my dear, I have a list of questions.
And do you think that it'll be helpful as far as getting to the bottom of what's happened in this case?
Well, I certainly think it'll be helpful in getting to the bottom of the case. I have a list of questions as long as my arm, as do my colleagues. I wouldn't like to discuss them here because I certainly don't want to give G4S the heads up. They already had their lawyers sitting on our meeting without introducing themselves today, which I took a dim view of. So, yeah, not to give them any advantage, but please believe me, we have done a lot of research. We will continue to do so in this time before they come, and we have a lot of probing questions to ask them.
Thank you very much, Glynnis Breytenbach, member of the Parliamentary Committee on Correctional Services.